Hi guys, Max here, and welcome back to another tutorial. Now in today's tutorial we're going over a little bit of a workflow / post-production kind of thing. So let's pretend that you've cut an interview, and then you want to take that interview from Premiere Pro into After Effects to do all your cool, crazy effects to your footage. So here's an example. Starts off like this, there's animation, looks pretty straightforward. Moves, does something like this. But once we do a little more editing to it and do a little more post-processing, we end up with something like this. It was just blank footage, really sleek animation that moves around, and just generally looks nice. So let's figure out how to do that from start to finish. So first off, in Premiere, let's say you've filmed an interview and you want to create a sequence that you can later take into After Effects and add all your graphics and color correction and post effectors. So this is how I would personally undertake a task like that. First, I would take my footage from the interview, create a new sequence in my project bin, new sequence, DSLR, 1080p, 24 frames a second, sequence 2, fine with me. Boom, we have our new sequence. So let's actually reorganize Premiere real quick. It needs to be right here. Cool, back to normal. So here's our sequence, and what I would do is also create a placeholder to place in my sequence when I needed to add an animation. So in our project bin, I would click New, Color Matte, 1920 by 1080 at 23 frames per second, click OK. I always make it red for placeholders and call it a placeholder and have it right here in my project bin. Now remember to keep all of your project bin organized. For the tutorial purposes, I'm not too worried about it, but future reference, to save you some time, keep this stuff organized into folders. Separate it from sequences, separate it from footage, and separate it from effects. So a placeholder will be effects, this would be footage, and this would be your sequence. So next in our step to get all this cool process done is I need to cut my footage. So first, I would take what I need from this. Yes, the interview looks great. There's, what is that, a whole minute? We need about just a few seconds of this. All right, right around 4 seconds will work for this purpose. Go back to our project bin. And next, what we'd want in our timeline is some graphics to pop up. So I take my placeholder and drag it in. So as the video is playing, the graphics would pop in. The placeholder would show up where all my other graphics would go. And then finally, to add a little extra for this, we have another part of an interview that was by me. So this is me. Cool. I had a beanie and a plaid shirt on. So once you've cut your interview and you're ready to take it into a more deeper, hands-heavy post-production workflow, and all this cutting has been locked in and you're ready to go, really, really simple step. Obviously, you would save your project, and then you would highlight everything, right-click, highlight everything in your main sequence for editing, right-click, and go to Replace with After Effects Composition. Now, when After Effects opens up, it will prompt you to save the file. Let's call this New. Doesn't matter what it's called. And here's your sequence. So first off, here's our cuts we made in Premiere that we can start putting animation on top of. Now, the animation that you saw in my example, we'll look at it again, was this cool HUD looking animation. And to be honest, this particular animation I didn't make myself. I actually downloaded it online, but I paid for it. Now, if you'd like to know where I got this from, I will leave a link in the description of where you can download this exact file that I'm using right now. So basically what I downloaded was a series of alpha channel videos, which an alpha channel is a transparent video of HUD animations. So basically, we can open this up and take a look at it. One of these HUD animations. Just stuff like this. You can see that it's just transparent animation, no background, that I can drag and drop onto my sequences to make pretty cool stuff. So what we're going to do is actually in our project bin is we're going to make a new folder and call it effects. Then we'll take that HUD animation, highlight it all, and drag and drop it into our effects folder. Now just to get started, you can just drag and drop any of these onto your project, and boom, you have HUD animation. And I lucked out and chose the exact one that I needed for my first clip. So what we're going to do is go ahead and start editing this HUD animation onto our footage. No color correction just yet, but we will start with this. So what we're going to do is position it over here somewhere, right where we kind of want it, next to her face. We'll scale it up a bunch to have it really cool right over here. And right now it looks very flat on the screen. It doesn't look like it's included in the footage. So what we'll do is actually turn the 3D layer option on with our footage. And what we can do is actually click W on our keyboard to hold the rotation tool down and actually rotate this to kind of like match it sort of to the footage. You can actually drop down on your tag right here in your transform options and actually dial this in a little more point by point. But for the most part, I think this looks like it needs to be there. Next, what we'll do is actually keyframe this and make it move with the footage. So what we'll do is actually key our orientation, and we will key it right here with this little hourglass pin I just clicked. Go down on our timeline and actually make it move just a little bit. Tilt it back some, maybe this way, so it's actually moving in our footage. Cool. Next step is to make it look like it's behind her. Really easy way to do this. Click on your layer, click your pen tool, and drag a mask around your interviewee that we have in our composition. So boom, now it looks like it's sort of behind her. We can actually go into our mask and actually feather the edges with this little option right here. Feather it. Then go to mask expansion and move it back some. And yeah, it's starting to look really nice, like it's really there. Next, what we can do is go to effects and presets and go to fill. Drag a fill onto this layer. Change the color. I changed mine to black for this specific animation. And boom, it's looking pretty cool. So we'll drag this back, our composition selection, and click RAM preview and see what this looks like. I think it looks really good. Cool. Next step. We need to make this into some cool animation. So what we're going to do, because this is our placeholder layer, we are going to right click this layer, pre-compose, and in our pre-comp, we will call it effects_1 because we know this is our first effects clip in our composition, and click OK and leave all attributes in example length comp02. Click OK. Boom, we have a new composition inside of our thing called effects1. We can double click this composition and see that it is inside. So right here, something's going to happen. And around right here, we want it to end. So double click with our little timeline bar on top of your composition. You can see that that ends right here. We'll drag this back to make sure that our animation ends here. So we want our final animation to be, I think it was number 16. Yep, this thing right here. So this scrolls in. And remember, these are just transparent alphas. And what I'm doing is just building an animation that I sort of like. That's about it. Nothing too complicated or fancy. Looks cool to me. Next, we're going to find another one that we want to add. Yep. This is the next one that we need, number 10. This is the first animation that will pop up. This pops up, scrolls down, but it keeps going. We want it to disappear before this animation comes in. So what we'll do is actually duplicate the layer. So Command D, right click the duplicate, go to time, reverse layer. So what that will do is reverse it. So we can scroll this back, scroll this side of this animation back, drag this layer right here. So it has essentially been reversed. So it will basically have an in and an out, just like that. Cool. Next up, we need another animation to jump in with the 3. I think it might be. Yep. Number 18 is our next animation. And what it's going to do is start on the right side and move to the left. Cool. So move it over, it'll start here. And now this is where stuff starts getting fancy. What we're going to do is go to right click new camera, click OK. Then right click new null object. Now take the camera and pick whip it to your null, because your null will be the object that you use to control the movements of your camera. Now next on the to-do list, we will turn all these layers into 3D layers so our camera can see them in 3D space. So just to give ourselves a little more time, we're going to scroll the ending down a little bit, maybe drag this one out right here. And we need to duplicate and reverse our top layer too. This one right here. So Command D to duplicate it, right click, time, reverse the layer, drag it back in time some, drag this back in time some. A little more will do the trick. So by the time our final layer is appearing, this one's disappearing. Cool. Then what we'll do is actually parent the reversed layers to their counterparts. So if we move them on the screen, the counterparts will move along with them without us having to touch them. Cool. Next, what we'll do is actually start giving these things motion. So we'll click on this layer right here. Maybe we'll scale it up in our timeline a little bit. Click W on our keyboard to rotate it some. Go back in time. Drop down our position tag, transform. Let's go ahead and scale or tag our orientation and key our position, both of them. Move down on our timeline. Let's drag this layer out so we can see what's going on. Click W to rotate it some, to give it another key. Maybe we'll move the position over a little bit. There's some slight movement, just like that. Now with this layer, we're also going to key the transformation. X, Y, Z. You can key them all, it's not a big deal. I normally do because I know it needs to start here. So take the W, move it over a little bit. Take this over here. We're going to have it be all the way over here by the time it's done. Grab the W and move it over. And we'll actually scale it up a bunch. Take it down. Scale it up. Just like this. And by the time this goes in, it's just like that. Move this layer back some so it's all together. Cool, it's looking good so far. Nice. Actually bring this on the Z-axis towards us. And now what we can do is actually start maneuvering our camera to give it a little bit of movement. So transform, position and scale. I think orientation will work too. Move it on our timeline. Zoom in a little bit. Keep zooming in. And when it gets to right here, we just start moving out a little bit. Then it goes like this, and it will ease into this being small. So we can highlight all of this, right click, keyframe assistant, easy ease. Now let's give this a watch. There's movement. It's looking good so far. A little bit of the blink will fix just because the layer's not dragged out long enough. Cool. Move this layer back to fits that. Drag it down. Right click this. Command click this. Keyframe assistant. Ease in. Go to the graph editor. Actually make it do something like this. So it goes, eases out. Yep. Looks pretty cool so far. So what we'll do now is actually take our placeholder, drop a fill onto our placeholder to change the background color. Do this, drop a fill onto our bottom layer, change it to black, copy this fill, select all of our previous layers, and paste the fill. So now all of our objects are black in the screen. So now when we RAM preview this, it's starting to look pretty cool. Not bad. We need to move this back in time a little bit to get rid of that duplicated layer. This needs to be gone a little bit before we start zooming in. And yeah, I think this will work. I think it looks nice, really good. So a lot of animating going on here. I'm sorry if it's a little bit confusing, but it's all best guess, just whatever looks cool to you. So we have a little bit of a camera movement to get the zoom out, and we have a lot of 3D movements with our layers. So let's jump back into our main composition, and now this is this, which is really freaking awesome. We need to move this back in time a little bit to get the start of our composition, which is right around here. Go back. Here this is. Then it's going to change to this, which we can actually have it start, I think, right around here. So it's this. Move it back some maybe. I think that'll do. Now here comes the fun part. What we're going to do is actually take this composition and move it above us. And the reason we're doing this, you'll see in just a second. So we've moved it up. It's now above this bottom layer. We'll take this bottom layer and actually pre-compose it. Call it footage 1. So we have a nice single footage layer right here that changes to this above us. Then we'll right click on our project, new, null, call it move control. Big bold letters, we know what it's doing. So we'll take everything and parent everything to the move control. Our footage, our final footage right down here. Everything's parented to the move control. So when we actually click P on our keyboard to move our move control and move down our timeline and actually move it down like this, everything moves in sync together. So it looks really nice. Then we can highlight both of these, or actually keyframe assistant, ease out, keyframe assistant, ease in, go to the middle, click on our layer, click our graph, and actually do a little bit of fancy editing on the graph to give it a little movement. Go back to our composition, jump out of the graph editor, and actually see what this looks like. We can see that movement that we created before with our previous composition. Move this back in time a little bit. We have a little more time for movement. I think we could play this out a little more. Yep, I think it should be good. Just like that. Nice. It's looking really, really good. Then we can go ahead and finish this movement off. Let's actually make our composition a little longer. So to go to composition settings, then change this to about 20 seconds so we can play with our final footage. Zoom out. Here's the final footage. We can actually copy this beginning keyframe and paste it. Copy this final keyframe and paste it. Right click, ease out, or command click both of these keyframes twice to turn them back to normal keyframes. Keyframe assistant, ease out. Keyframe assistant, ease in. To go back to our graph editor and do the same thing we did to our last. And now we have a full-blown thing that will change back to our other footage. How cool is that? It starts off like this, moves to this, moves back to this interview, and we're good to go. Next on our list, we need to start color correcting this bad boy. So what we're going to do is actually use Magic Bullet Looks today. It's a purchasable plugin that I will leave in the description so you can color correct your footage really quickly. So we'll jump into our Blackmagic footage, drag our Magic Bullet Looks onto it, and it goes into our effect controls, and we'll click Edit. The Magic Bullet Looks will open up, and we now have some footage to edit. I'll color correct, that is. Go to our post-production controls over here. You can hover your mouse over the side to open it up. We will increase the exposure just by a hair. Jump back over here, grab the pop icon, increase the pop. We'll go to hue and saturation and actually take our saturation down a little bit. Then we'll go to three-way color corrector and take our shadows down to the blue a little bit. Take this down some. Now it's looking kind of blue and needy. Blue and needy. Pretty cool. I think it looks pretty nice. Let's go back to edit and actually probably take the exposure down some. We don't need it that bright. I think that looks great. Cool. Color corrected our footage. So now it's just like this. Very blue and tech oriented, I think. Moves over. Just like that. Now that we have this, the next thing we want to do is make this look a little more cinematic and cool. So what we're going to do is actually add an iris to our project. And since we have Magic Bullet Looks, we're going to use that to make it. So what we'll do is create a new adjustment layer. And what this adjustment layer is going to do, because we're going to call it iris, is create an iris for our entire project. And because it's an adjustment layer, anything that is under it and below the layer in its duration will be affected by what effects we apply to this. So what we'll do is go to Magic Bullet Looks, drag and drop it onto our adjustment layer, go to Edit. Inside of here, go to Lens, go to Edge Softness, which is basically the iris. Let's widen this out a good bit, just like this. And it gives us that nice blurry effect around the edges. Look at there. Might want to jump back in and make it a little more pronounced. Go to blur size, increase the ratio a little bit. Click finished. Let's do it one more time. I think we can kind of push this a little further. I think that looks good. Click finished. Look at that, looking great. Next on our to-do list is to add film grain to give this even more of a cinematic look. Because, you know, film grain is a huge thing to make things look cinematic. So what we'll do is right-click New, Adjustment Layer. Actually call this Grain for Film Grain. Go to our Effects and Presets and type Film. I have another plugin called Film Convert Pro 2.36. We'll drag and drop this onto Grain. And immediately it gives us this nice grainy look. You can already see it everywhere. We can actually drop down on the camera settings and the film settings and actually change it to something is more appropriate for our project. I always use the stock settings because personally I think they're awesome and they're really all that I need. I think FJ8553 looks pretty nice. Film color, bring it down to 0. So the color of the film is not affected, but the film grain is there. Nice, little contrasty. Next, what we'll do is go to Mojo. And I probably should have added this before I added film grain, but what this is going to do is actually give us a little bit of punch. Drag it under our film right here. Use the skin color to bring the skin color back a little bit. So I dragged Mojo down to 0, skin color down to -13, and Mojo is included in the Magic Bullet Look suite. So if you have this, you'll have Mojo. It's just a plugin. Looks really nice. Turn our film convert back on, and now we have film grain and Mojo on our entire project. So let's give this a little render and see what it looks like. Cool, so far so good. It looks really nice. And one more step in the process. So what I'm going to do is actually drag in a really simple thing to make this look really, really nice, which is the black bar effect that we saw in our example video. So what I have is a PNG that I've created that I'll drag into my project bin, and I'll leave a link in the description about a video where I've made these transparent PNGs that are the correct ratio for cinema. And what we can do with this PNG is actually just drag it onto our timeline, and it's one solid layer that will be on top of everything that gives us black bars the entire time. Now it's 2.39 by 1 ratio, so if we scale it down to the correct thing, it's about this big, but I think it looks a little nicer if we give it a little wider. For this specific video, yes. So what we'll do is we'll render this out and see what this looks like. We could go into my clip and actually add in more effects with the mask and stuff, but it would just be repetitive by now. So I think you've already got it covered with what we did over here and on the motion of this and the movement of this. So let's give this a render and see how it goes. So normally to render this kind of stuff, I would go to Composition, Add to Render Queue, check this, put it somewhere we want. Let's go to Example. Example.mov, click on lossless, pops up this dialog box, not a dialog, but an option box. Go to Format Options, then go into here, drop down on your video codec, and I go to Apple ProRes 422HQ, click OK. QuickTime, everything looks okay, and then just click Render. Awesome. Now that that's rendered, we can open up our example and take a look at what we've created. Click play. I think it looks really good. Not exactly like our original, but I can't say that I wasn't rushing a tiny bit. A little more movement in these. This is a little bit different movie. I think the one in the newer one I made is a little smoother right here. Much smoother, much smoother. The color slightly different, but that's, to each his own. And there you go. That's about it. So thanks, guys. I'm Max. This is me. You see my face right here. How awesome is that? And please like and subscribe if this was helpful. Please leave a comment if you were confused in anywhere, and I'll try to explain more. But that's about it, guys. I really appreciate it. Until next time. Thanks.